Welcome to our first Careers in Health panel discussion. My name is Ferdinand Fenn Esser, the Health Science Program Director for the undergraduate pre-professional majors, pre-physical therapy, occupational therapy, and pre-physician assistant. It's my pleasure to work with Mercy's Career Services, Sarah Shepard, Joy Sampson, and Dorleen Kerwin, as they facilitate the fielding of questions today to our graduate PT, OT, and PA panel. Before we start, a few reminders. Students, for attendance, be sure to send Alan Rossi your CWID or email through the chat. Everyone note that we're recording, and please note that everyone is muted. Raise your hand if you have any questions or comments. What's the importance of this event? Mentorship, support, collaboration. I've noted that the #1 reason new undergraduate health science pre-professional track students state that they've chosen their professional track is to help people. Yeah, some say might make money, some say get a secure profession, but helping people. Now, as those same students work into their graduate programs, work with their faculty and classmates and begin to see the applications of their education, they develop a deeper passion and loyalty for their chosen profession. This expresses itself as a respect for their mentors, and in turn, a respect to mentor younger, interested students. This event is your opportunity to begin this process if you haven't already. Graduate students, please reach out to the undergraduates. And undergraduates, do take this opportunity to make use of the mentorship to maximize your learning and success. Please join your pre-professional club or graduate health professions club. For the professionals, thank you. Your participation implicitly states to all these students your commitment to them, your commitment to your profession, and in addition, your respect for each of the other professions here in their complementing your own service to patients. This message of teamwork is the best part of our healthcare system, and the reason I, as a 35-year veteran healthcare practitioner, love Mercy College. Now, let's share some good news. Data supporting each of these amazing professions by the US News and World Report in their latest annual ranking, the 100 best jobs. To rank the 100 best jobs of 2021, US News uses these qualities. The job is in high demand. It pays well. It consistently challenges us. It matches our skills and talents. It isn't too stressful, offers advancement opportunities, and provides a work-life balance. So, according to the 100 Best Jobs report, where do these professions stand? Physical therapy, number 21. Awesome. Occupational therapy, number 19. Amazing, amazing opportunity. Physician assistant, number 1. Impressive. Now, to kick off our Careers in Health panel discussion, here is Joy Sampson, who will be asking questions to our graduate student panel. Joy.
Thank you, Dr. Esser, and welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you. So I will start with our graduate students and ask the panelists to please provide a brief introduction and a brief overview as well of your educational background, including any internships or jobs you've had. So let's start with PT grad student Rachel.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel and I'm a third-year PT student here at Mercy. I'm so close to being done. I'll be done in January. So there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So a little bit about me is that I did go to Mercy College. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in health sciences. And I did a few internships just to meet the requirements to get into grad school. And I did also work at a PT place, and then COVID happened. So then I just stopped working there. But that's pretty much it and everything about me.
Thank you, Rachel. Next, we'll go to Paul. Paul is a PT grad as well. Is Paul here? Oh, there you go, Paul. Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Couldn't unmute. So my name is Paul Sylvester. Also a, graduate student of the Mercy College and undergraduate degree. I received my degree in exercise science. I took the clinical science, the clinical track in exercise science. Internships, I've done quite a few. I did an internship at Pro Clinics near Mercy in Ardsley. I completed an internship in physical medicine and rehabilitation in Riverdale in the Bronx, if anyone's familiar. And I also did another internship at, I believe it was called Adira in Yonkers in a nursing home facility. And I did a sort of just observantship under a gentleman by the name of Jeff Young, who's in the medical fitness sort of realm. And I've never actually worked in a PT office as a PT aide or any other type of position. However, I worked for about 3 years as a realtor. It's kind of strange, very, very different from what I'm learning about. And I've been working in the corporate fitness industry for coming up on 2 years now. And I was a personal trainer at corporate gyms for about a year prior to that. So that's about me.
Thank you, Paul. Next, we'll go to OT grad Nick. You're probably, yeah, you're muted. So Nick, if you want, we'll come right back to you. Okay, there you go.
I got it. I didn't have the option. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick. I'm in OT. I started out, I got my associate's degree in exercise science and then transferred to Mercy and got a bachelor's in health science before I was accepted into the master's program. I didn't have a whole lot of experience working in healthcare. I did when I was much younger. My first job was a housekeeper in a nursing home, but outside of that, no real kind of clinical experience. Once I was in the program though, the internships they offered were great. I worked in a school-based OT practice, not worked, internship, where I would observe their OT in elementary school. And then I worked at Andrews Center, observing and working with the kids on campus there, which was great and so much fun. I'm currently rounding my final corner into my graduation. I'll be graduating in February, hopefully licensed by December. So my light at the end of the tunnel is also in view, and I'm very excited.
Great, thank you, Nick. Now we will go to PA grad Diane.
Hi everyone, my name is Diane. I'm a first year PA student, finishing up this semester, and then we'll be starting clinicals in the summer. So I still have about 1.5 years ahead of me. But a little background, I went to school in Amherst, Massachusetts. I did a bit of research while I was there, but the majority of my clinical experience comes from working in urgent cares in New York. And yeah, that's my experience.
Okay, thank you, Diane, and to all of you. Now, panelists, I will ask a few more questions so we can learn a little bit more about you and your experiences. So my next question is, what are some specific skills that you learned in college that you have found useful in your graduate studies? Now, all of you don't have to answer each question, but whoever would like, maybe a couple of you can answer that question.
I can go first.
Okay,
So I think just in general, in undergrad is when I really learned how to manage my time in studying. I feel like you're kind of thrown out there on your own after high school. So you have to really figure out, how to study, when to study, and how you're going to do it. So for me, the Pomodoro method really works. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but essentially it's like you work for 25 minutes straight. Like you don't look at your phone, you don't go, anywhere else. And then you get a 5-minute break. I've adjusted it now that I'm in PE school to about 50 minutes of work and then a 10-minute break because you need a little bit of a longer stretch. But that's really the key thing that I took away from undergrad.
Thank you.
If I could, in undergrad, I was, like probably most of us at some point, a professional procrastinator, and I didn't really develop good study habits in undergrad. I was able to do the work. I did put my effort in. I was able to get good grades, but I didn't really have any concrete study habits. And then when I got to grad school, I realized I was at a severe disadvantage and I really needed to develop some quick. So I would definitely recommend developing those study habits before getting into a graduate program, because it is a violent learning curve.
Thank you both. The next question is, what did you find most challenging in your undergraduate studies in relation to your goal to be in a graduate program at Mercy? So can you unmute Paul? Paul, would you like to answer this next question? Sylvester?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Okay, I'm sorry. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure you can unmute yourself. The
Yep.
question is, what did you find most challenging in your undergraduate studies in relation to your goal to be in a graduate program at Mercy? So what was most challenging for you in your undergraduate studies?
So I think something most challenging was a lot of the stuff that we were learning so many different areas of study. So like physics, chemistry, physiology, anatomy, all these different things. And then having to find a way to sort of tie it all in and find a way to relate it back to the health field again. Because just by itself, sometimes it's hard to see how it all connects. And then being able to find a way to kind of make it all combine and collaborate together. So that for me was probably the most challenging.
Thank you. Would any of the other graduate panelists like to also answer that? I think it was, thank you, Paul. And I think it was spoken to a little bit with learning, you know, just some of the things they needed to adjust for graduate school. So thank you. I will move on to the next question. The next question is, how did you prepare yourself to get into the graduate program? And this might be a question that all of you can answer, since I'm sure your processes were varied.
Okay, I can start.
Thank you.
So throughout my undergrad, I had a really close relationship with my PAC counselor. So I would honestly go to her for everything, and she always knew the way and what I had to get done in order to make all my requirements. So she always knew the classes that I had to apply for. So that was a way for her to help me, and that helped me tremendously. And then I also had a few friends that interviewed for the program. So I would just ask them a few tips and tricks and what they experienced to help me and guide me in the right directions for what I was gonna get hit with the day of the interview.
That's great. Thank you. Would one of the other panelists like to also chime in?
Sure. So for me personally, I was on the pre-med track, so I had a lot of the core requirements, but specifically for PA school, I don't know if it's like this for OT and PT, but each program has their own specific requirements that you need in order to just even apply. So I think when I was preparing myself, the easiest way I found to do was to make an Excel spreadsheet. I looked at each school that I was interested in, and then I would write down all of their requirements. Then I would just check it off as I went and I completed that particular requirement. And I would definitely recommend that to anyone who is interested in applying. Another thing is to check to see if your school that you're interested in is even on CASPA, which is the central application system. There are still a few schools that do their own applications or even have supplemental applications. So I think, again, that's something that's really important to include on your checklist before you even think about applying. And the last thing is to just start really early. It opens in April. So if you prepare yourself the year before, even during the summer when you're a little bit more free, that would probably be the best time to do it.
Something that I did to prepare was I kind of stopped by at the physical therapy office, and I met some of the faculty there and kind of got to know them a little bit, and they got to know me a little bit. and ask them a little bit on like advice in the application process, because we may be able to read what the requirements are and such, but being able to know from them like things that we could do to kind of streamline or their advice on best practices in the application process, I think really helps. So I highly recommend that. It might be a little challenging now due to the COVID restrictions. However, trying to find a way to build a relationship and getting that advice directly from that office.
Thank you. You can go ahead, Nick, if you're.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna completely agree with Paul. Getting to know the faculty ahead of time and getting their advice and opinions on things. I know coming through asking certain professors, you know, I'm a little weak in this area. Is this going to affect me at all? Well, it might not affect you that much if you do a little better in this area. So that would be another bit of advice I would give too, is really play to your strengths and identify your weaknesses kind of going in. I think a lot of professors like to hear that. I know a lot of questions, similar questions, you know, like what could you improve in? What do you think you're weakest at? And being able to identify that concretely kind of gives you room to grow. And I think that makes a good impact.
That's great. Thank you. And I know we have a question. I think we'll hold the questions until the end. Am I correct, Sarah? And then we'll ask, so student asks the question, so I'll circle back on that in a moment. Now, my next question is for you panelists to do some reflection and offer some advice to the students as far as what they can do, because I know we all wish we had a crystal ball, right? And we could see what's coming ahead. And so since we do not, for other students before they get to that point, maybe you can share what you would do differently in your undergraduate degree, given what you know now. It's a tough question, right? Trying to think about what would I go back and do differently?
I mean, there's a list for me. There's a dozen things I would go back and change instantly. You know, very proud of where I ended up and how I got here. I would definitely plan better. You know, I kind of changed mid-degree. Like I was going for health science pre-OT, but I had enough credits to actually get a degree, and I was kind of getting beaten up by, you know, the transferring from 3 different schools. I wish I planned ahead better and lined up my classes through each semester, not just the next one I was going to take, but maybe 2 or 3, or, you know, 2 years, 2 or 3 semesters down the line to kind of keep me on a path. I was very unorganized going in and kind of was very reactive through my process. I would definitely plan ahead.
Thank you, Nick. That's very good advice. I think many of us who have finished college are probably thinking the same thing. Doing more planning. Thank you.
I always say
Yes.
hindsight is 20/20.
Yes, exactly. Would one other panelist like to answer that?
So for me, I guess, I was on the pre-med track, but I really hadn't decided what I wanted to do with my career. And I didn't I didn't have my eyes set on like a particular role. And I think that hindered me from just volunteering for, you know, even in like a PT office or an OT office. I kind of didn't know. So I just didn't really apply anywhere. So I guess the thing I would change is just if an opportunity comes by to take it regardless, because you can always learn something from it anyway.
That's great. Thank you, Diane. Okay, my next question now is, did your idea of your career path change while you were in your undergraduate program? So did you kind of come into college as an undergraduate thinking you're going to pursue one direction for your career, and then along the way decide to go in a completely different direction? Or did you guys feel like you knew pretty early on and you kind of stuck on that path?
I think I was lucky enough to know pretty early on that physical therapy is what I wanted to pursue, and that was my goal career-wise. But like I said, going into my undergraduate studies, I was already working as a realtor, and And then after completing my undergraduate degree, I ended up working as a personal trainer and then getting into corporate fitness. And so I guess that's like kind of bridging now until I reach that physical therapy goal. I didn't really expect to make those shifts or to work those jobs or have those careers. So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah.
Yes, it did. Thank you. And I'm sure you, in doing that, you probably learned some things along the way that you can use now in what you're doing, what you're pursuing. So great. Thank you. Rachel, Nick, Diane, did any of you want to answer that?
I knew pretty early. I wasn't sure where I wanted to land in healthcare. A little unsure of my own ability, kind of going in, and like you said, you learn a lot along the way. So I went in stepping stones. So I went to exercise science, a more gross understanding of the body and how it worked, and then used that to go on to a health science and kind of feel around to see what I was more interested in, and ended up at OT.
Very nice. Thank you. Rachel, did you want to answer also?
Yeah, I kind of always knew that I wanted to be a physical therapist too down the line. My mom, she had a stroke about like 11 years ago, and she went through whole PT, and that was like one of the main reasons why she did get like all her mobility and everything back. So ever since then, like that just was my passion and my drive to get to where I am today.
Thank you. That's certainly a motivator. Okay, so my next question now is about your licensure requirement. So what is the licensure requirement and or exam process for your current programs?
Do you mean like at the end, once you've completed graduate school?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So for PA students, we take something called the PANCE, which is like the Physician Assistant National Certifying Exam. You take that, and then recertification, I believe, is every 10 years. And then in between then, you have to complete something called like CME, which is a continuing medical education credit. So you have to complete 100 of them every 2 years. And I think that's really the basis of our certification.
Thank you. Does someone want to answer from maybe PT or OT? What your licensure upon leaving grad school? Okay, we'll move on.
You want the students to answer that, or you want me to?
Oh, well, so it was for the panelists, but if you want to answer it, Ruth, that will be helpful.
Okay, just so I hope my students know this, but after they graduate, they have to sit for, just like PA, a national physical therapy exam. It's called the NPTE, and it's a comprehensive exam, and you get licensed by each state. So once you take the exam and pass it, then you apply for the state. There's a number of states that are in a compact that you could interchange your license between states, but New York is not one of them. So.
Very interesting. Thank you. Oh, Mindy, go ahead.
And I could answer for OT. Very similar. There is a national board, the NBCOT, the National Board Certification of OT, is an exam that students have to pass in order to be able to become registered and licensed, and very similar to physical therapy, that you need to be licensed per state. And there also are some compacts to be so that you can do teletherapy across state lines as well. So that's something new that's come up, and we are really advocating for that right now in New York.
That's great. Wow. That would benefit a lot of people. Thank you. Thank you, Mindy and Ruth. Okay, so I'm running out of time here. So I have two more questions for the panelists. What is the most challenging part of graduate school, and what is the most rewarding part? So maybe a couple of you can answer that.
So I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier about my the study habits, because they're all the more useful in grad school. There is a lot of work. It is a lot of research. It's a lot of writing. The work is very consistent day to day, but it does build off itself. So a lot of us in the cohort talk about, where we were day one, and where we are now, it leaps and bounds. We would hardly recognize ourselves now. So definitely the most rewarding is seeing the growth in yourself, and depthening that all that information you have and being able to pull it out of your head when you need to, because when you first start, it's a very new experience. The work matters. I don't want to say undergrad doesn't matter, but the work is more intense, and it's more on purpose for your career that you're pursuing. So there's a gravity about it. So the workload, the new experiences, and the intensity is definitely a challenge, but you're rewarded because you're pursuing your goals. You're in that next stage of pursuing that goal, and seeing the change in yourself is great.
Nick, thank you. That was very well said, having gone through graduate school myself. So very well said. Thank you. I will actually just go to the next question so we can move along. What advice do you have for current undergraduate students looking to get into one of our Mercy College's grad programs? So can one of you give one piece of advice for a student looking to get into a grad program?
I just think one of the most important things is just to be like authentic and be yourself. So in my interviews, we had a group interview, and these two other students were with me, and I thought I had no chance of getting in. They had much better life experiences, and everything that they were talking about, I had like next to nothing. But at the end of the day, they got in, and so did I, and we're best of friends now. So just be yourself.
Thank you, Rachel. That was very nice advice as well. Bring your authentic self. So that concludes my questions to the graduate school panelists. I want to thank you guys. We'll circle back to you, but I'm going to pass it on to Sarah now to hear from our faculty.
Thank you so much, Joy, and thank you to the graduate students. That was awesome advice. Rachel, I think that advice is good for any part of life. Always be your authentic self and bring your authentic self to wherever you go. So now we're going on to the faculty panel. So I'll just go through and ask each faculty member to introduce themselves. So maybe we can start with you, Ruth. Oh, and also provide a brief overview of your career, please. Oh, you're muted. Common error we all make.
Got it. Yeah, I know. You think after a year we'd have this down. I'm Ruth Hansen. I am faculty here at Mercy. I've been here for quite a while. I've been a physical therapist for, like Fen, 35 plus years. I started out in when I started out in PT, there weren't as many options of where to work. You pretty much worked in a hospital. So I started out in acute care. I worked there for about a year and a half, and then I went to Helen Hayes Hospital, a rehab center in Rockland County. I worked there starting as a senior therapist. Kind of went around the hospital, a lot of different units. I wanted to work with the neurologic population, which is what I did. Did a number of things there, started some programs, and somehow, I don't know how, got into cardiac rehab. They started admitting patients who had cardiac problems into an ICU unit there, and started a cardiac rehab program. And I just happened to be on, it was a spinal cord miscellaneous medical unit at the time, and we were taking these sicker patients in. And that's how I ended up in cardiac rehab. I'm a cardiovascular and pulmonary specialist, board certified through APTA, and that's my specialty. So that's kind of how I got into that, just by chance. If you had told me when I was in school that that's what I would do, I would have said no way. But that's what I do. And I've been here for a number of years. I teach a few different courses in the program, and I also manage the clinical education program.
Thank you, Ruth. Great to hear about your career path. And Mindy, would you like to tell us about yourself?
Sure. First of all, welcome everybody. And I'm so happy and excited to see that you're interested in pursuing one of these areas, one of these degrees, and learning more. It's something that I hope that you're hearing a bit of the passion from each of us, because I think that these fields all really do require a passion to be able to take care of others, to be able to learn and be a continuous learner. I have been continuously learning for almost 35 years. So I think we're all kind of in the same boat. I started out working first in adult rehabilitation. I got my master's degree at NYU and continued on to be working in adult rehabilitation and also on burn units and making lots of different rotations. I then switched rather, I'd say 10 years into my career to be working with a pediatric population. It had to do with a move and having children of my own. So I moved into the area of pediatrics and specifically into the area of school-based practice where I've been for the past 20 plus years. And about 7 years ago, I decided to go back for my clinical doctorate in occupational therapy and started to do a good deal of research in school-based practice and doing a bunch of writing and also, doing different kinds of studies and presenting and the like, which I adore. That led me to Mercy, where there were many opportunities to be able to continue on and work with students in their capstones. I'm an assistant professor in the OT department, and I primarily teach the pediatrics and also adolescent track. In addition to that, I have advanced certification in assistive technology, and I also teach the assistive technology course. That's me.
Thank you, Mindy. Awesome. And Ruth, welcome. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ruth Hansen. I'm an emergency medicine PA, and I'm one of the academic coordinators, or the academic coordinator at Mercy College PA program. I graduated from Queens College with my undergrad, went off to Cornell for my master's in health science, and I worked as an emergency medicine provider for about 5-6 years, and I'm actually fairly new to the academic realm. This is my first year within the academic quadrant. I teach primarily classes in clinical medicine like cardiology, pulmonology, gastroenterology, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to start with the first question. I think I'll ask each of you to answer if that's okay, each question. So we'll start with you, Ruth. What advice do you have for an undergraduate student looking to be accepted into your graduate program?
I would say one, to make the most out of their undergraduate career and try to learn as much as they can and to do as well as they can. And I think also to take advantage of opportunities to really learn whatever your respective field that you want to go into. At least for PT, we really look for students to know what they're getting into, to know the field and to know our program.
Great, thank you, Ruth. And Mindy, same question for you.
Ruth took the words out of my mouth. I think really many people don't know quite what occupational therapy is. So I think really by being able to do some observations, to speak to some occupational therapists, to determine what some of the differences are between the different professions that may overlap in many ways, that would absolutely be something that I would recommend as an undergraduate to prepare yourself to know where you're going to be going, where you'll land.
Great, thank you. Perhaps doing some informational interviews with a few people you can find on LinkedIn or someone in your neighborhood might work as well. And how about you, Ruth?
I of course want to echo everything that was said so far, and luckily some of that is actually a requirement to get into the PA program, where you do need to have adequate amount of experience within the medical realm, whether it's a medical assistant, EMT, whatever have you. I think I'd like to emphasize, take a break, take a year off, take some time to yourself, because the PA program is about 28 months of health. It's a lot to learn in a very short period of time, and it can be quite tough. And I'd rather you guys, if you get into the program, be nice and well rested.
Great advice. Take a break. We all need that, right? Okay, next question for you, Ruth. So for your own experience, what did you do in your graduate program to help you land that first job?
Well, I don't really fit the bill.
That's okay, we're all different.
Because actually when I went to PT school, I actually have a bachelor's in PT. And then I went back and got my master's in exercise physiology and doctorate in PT, et cetera. So I think as far as landing the first job in PT, it's never really been difficult to land a job. When I started out in PT, I did my clinicals, and then I just filled out applications and went on interviews, and pretty much most of the places that I went on interviews offered me a job. So it wasn't all that hard. I think for students entering the field now, with COVID, it's a little difficult because some of the places haven't really started opening up completely yet. But I think a lot of our students up until COVID were getting offered jobs from their clinicals. So hopefully that will return. I'm starting to get emails now from practices. Oh, we're hiring. Can you send this around? But it was probably about a year without that. So I'm just starting now. So I'm hoping that will turn around for the new grads.
I'm sure it will. We've always seen so many employers seeking your students. Right when they graduate, they have their pick of jobs. So I'm sure that'll come back. Okay, Mindy, would you like to go next? Thank
Sure.
you.
I landed my first job from my internship, from my field work. So it's almost like on the job training. So you're there for 12 weeks. And during that time, you get to know the place and to see if you're a fit, and they get to know you. So that's how I landed my first job.
Great, thank you. And Maruf?
I actually have a similar story where I got my job during my internship years. It's not that hard for a PA to get a job. Thankfully, that we are pretty much in very high demand. I think it's more about getting a good job. And I think for that sake, I would say the best advice I can give you is show your worth during your clinical phase, and know your worth, so that when you're applying to these jobs and you're told, well, this is how much you're going to get, these are your benefits, don't sell short. You're going into a great profession, make sure that you're getting paid and treated as such.
Thank you, Maruf. I would second that, especially with these three particular majors, very highly sought after by employers, which is a great problem to have, right? Next question, we'll start with you. We're just looping around, Ruth. What made you want to pursue the career path that you're on?
I never liked this question because I don't have a really good story. Like Rachel has a good story, like her mother had a stroke. And even when I went for my interview in PT school, I didn't have a good story. My story's kind of lame, but it's kind of a funny story. I watched a movie. I watched a movie called The Other Side of the Mountain. I'm really dating myself, but it was about an Olympic skier who had a spinal cord injury. And it showed her kind of going through rehab. And I always knew I wanted to work in a hospital in the medical field. And I saw that, and there were a few other movies I saw, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. And I researched it and, went to school for it right out of high school and loved my career. So I'm thankful that I watched the movie. Still one of my favorite movies.
Must have been a really good movie to change your whole life, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. And how about you, Mindy?
Oh, I took kind of like the snaky way around. I started off undergraduate wanting to go pre-med. And I got halfway through it till I realized, I'm not quite sure that I want to continue down this path. And I noticed that many of the classes that I really, really loved had to do with communications. So I decided to switch, and I had to switch schools as well. And I got my bachelor's in speech pathology.
Wow.
And rather than you needed to get a master's degree in order to be able to practice. And over the summer, I needed when I was accepted to graduate school at Queens College, I wound up doing internships. You had to put in a certain number of hours. And what I got to observe and got to spend time interacting with were the OTs and the speech pathologists working with augmentative communication devices to help people that couldn't speak. So here comes looping back around to my technology interest. And so I wound up jumping ship. And those days, it wasn't as difficult to get into the graduate school. So instead of going to Queens College, I wound up going to NYU for OT, really loved it. And then later on in life, my research took me back to speech pathology, and I've done some research with some speech pathologists as well. So full circle, but
Thank you, Minnie. Sounds
way.
like your internship really helped shape what you
absolutely.
wanted to do. So everybody should do an internship. That's what I always say, if you can, if you're able to.
Absolutely.
And how about you, Maruth?
My reason for medicine was pretty multifactorial, but I think a big chunk of it was I was initially pre-med as well, but then I started to consider the lifestyle aspect of what a PA lifestyle versus an MD lifestyle is, and taking into consideration where I was in my life. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't do when they're going from college to master's. So, prestige, title, salary is not everything. Make sure to take the time to think about what you want out of life. Just career is not always the thing that should give you 100% of your happiness. And so definitely consider what your lifestyle will be too.
Thank you. Great advice. And work-life balance is so very important. So finding that, finding a place where you can have that is good to have. Okay, Ruth, next question. You're always the guinea pig on the question. Sorry. Did you ever face a time where you wanted to give up on your goal because it became too difficult?
No, I don't think so. Sorry, my answers aren't that great, but no, I not so much for PT. I mean, there were times I was a little worried, like, oh, am I going to like this? I was young when I went into it, very, very young. So there were times when, school was rough, but I didn't think, you have friends that you're with, and they kind of help drag you through it. So there wasn't really any time where I wanted to give up on that, but I think you just have to persevere, do your work, and you'll see the end of the tunnel, like some of our graduates have been saying, that they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Awesome. And try not to look at it all at once, because it's very overwhelming then. Piece by piece, chip away at it. Thank you, Ruth. How about you, Mindy?
I'm going to go back to something that Maru said, which is that the times that have been difficult for me were when I was trying to really maintain a home life work balance. So times when I had my children and they were going through school, that was challenging for me. But I think really the passion that I've had for the field always kept me practicing, whether it was part-time or, a case here or there. But that was the time that I would say was difficult.
And that's understandable, Mindy. Thank you. And how about for you, Maruth?
I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the question again, please?
No, I don't mind. Did you ever face a time where you wanted to give up on your goal because it became too difficult?
I wouldn't say I wanted to give up. I mean, certainly going from the pre-med track to like a PA track was, I wouldn't want to say I gave up on it, more of a change, but beyond that, no, I've always been pretty passionate about medicine. I knew that's the thing that makes me happy. And, from there, I continue to evolve within my passion and within my role. I don't think that even if you, let's say, do quote unquote, give up on your passion, I wouldn't look at it that way. I would say it's just a little change in the road, and hopefully it takes you to a place that will make you equally or even more happy.
Great point. Pivot is important. And Ruth, next question for you, more on the teaching side. So what motivates you to teach on the graduate level?
I would say kind of what motivates me is really what motivates me in clinical practice. And I kind of like clinical practice, and I like teaching. And, I really like it when I go in and I see a patient who's really sick and they really don't want to participate, and you kind of shape them and you see them walk out of the hospital. And I think with teaching, sometimes you get these students and they come in the first year and they're a little scared and maybe a little rough around the edges, and they're struggling. And then you see them evolve over the 3 years to be young professionals. And that's kind of nice. And I also think about, I'm passing on to them a passion for a field that I have, and they'll hopefully carry that on to have students in the future for themselves too.
Thank you. Great answer. How about you, Mindy?
I wanted to make a bigger splash. That's the bottom line. I'm in retirement right now. This is my second career. So I retired from working in the public schools to come right into academia to be teaching. And I really have always wanted to make a difference in people's lives. I think that's what all of us, share that are here, that we wanted to make a difference. And I found by teaching, I was able, it makes, I can have greater influence in helping people to be able to get to the point, helping our students to be able to get to the point where they may have the same passion, have definitely all the necessary skills to go out there and to make differences in other people's lives.
Awesome, thank you. And how about you, Maruf?
I'm a huge nerd and I love medicine. I get very, very excited, and my family members can tell you just how excited and geeky I get about it. And I love to translate that passion that I have into my teaching and try to show that to my students as well, so that they can be equally, hopefully, excited about the medicine. I mean, I would imagine so, them getting into the program, I'm sure that's what they want to do. But I also want to echo what Mindy says. Mindy, I've been agreeing with like everything you're saying, of course, Ruth as well, but you're absolutely right. I think that by teaching, we can create such a large impact. I can see maybe 30 patients in a day, or I can train 60 very well-trained PAs and each have them see 30 patients, much bigger scope.
Awesome. I bet your excitement is contagious in your classes.
I hope so.
I can feel it. Yeah. All right. Next, I'm going to combine the next two questions for you, Ruth. So what do you love most about your profession, and what do you like least about your profession?
The like least was hard. Like I said in my previous question, I think what I like the most is making a difference, but making a difference in, like, I don't feel like my job, like I'm going to work. When I was in the clinic, I would walk up the steps in the morning, and it doesn't really feel like going to a job. It almost feels like going to camp, because I meet people from all different walks of life, and I talk to them, I learn their stories, I learn their experiences while I'm changing one, while I'm helping them. And, teaching is a little different than being in the clinic, but I'm still meeting students from all different walks of life. In my job as director of clinic, I meet all sorts of different clinicians that are doing all sorts of different things. And I think for me, it's that social aspect of being able to do a job that makes a difference, and just interacting with people. I think that's what I like the most. What I like the least, currently, what I like the least is when clinics cancel. So it's been a rough year.
It sure has. That's completely understandable.
That's probably what I like the least is digging up clinics when they cancel. So that's from the teaching end of it.
All right. Thank you, Ruth. And how about you, Mindy?
I love opportunities. And I think that within the field of occupational therapy, there are tremendous opportunities working with across the lifespan, working in communities, working in homes, working in institutions. There's really, hospital-based and home-based. There's a variety of places where somebody can really find their niche and develop areas of expertise. So I love that about the field. Absolutely love it. And I myself have taken advantage of that and found myself in many different practice areas. What I dislike most, I'd say, about the field at this point in time would be some legal barriers that are presented by some of the laws, some of the the payment concerns that may be, tying our hands, some of the insurance, some of the insurance companies and the like. So that's what I'd say I dislike the most about the field, is that part.
Thank you, Mindy. And how about you, Maruf?
Mindy, you're just reading my mind all day. I absolutely agree with you. And I'll start with the negatives. For me, especially as a younger clinician, just starting out in my field, I would definitely say lawsuits are one of the most important things that I always worry about. And I'm sorry to make it sound so too real, but it is something that I think we all as clinicians always have to worry about in the back of our head. And of course, there's always the lack of access to medicine for a large chunk of the population. And that's nothing new, unfortunately, but it is something that is disheartening about the medical profession in total. That being said, that's a small aspect of the position, and there's so much more good that comes from it, whether it's the constant knowledge that you're always gaining, because I can't think of anyone that knows everything about medicine and says, yep, I have nothing left to learn. And if you're someone who loves to learn, this is an amazing profession for you. But then also to meet new people all the time. In the ER, I see maybe 30 patients a day, and you know, in my career, my short career, I've already seen maybe 10,000 different unique patients. And those interactions are each enriching in their own way. You learn different things from these people. Everyone has a different background. Me working within New York City and Queens and the Bronx, I get to meet a lot of different people with a lot of different cultural backgrounds and really increase my own knowledge of life in total. And, you know, that's just more of the non-medical aspect of it. Medicine, of course, you know, it's always going to be fun with everything that you can learn.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Ruth, the next question for you is what different practice areas are available within your profession, within your program?
There's really a lot of different practice sessions, practice areas. In fact, I've really worked in a very small percentage of them. But so you can work in a hospital, you can work in a rehab center, and even within those areas, you could specialize in neurology, orthopedics, cardiac, pediatrics. You can work in a school. There's home care, there's hospice, there's outpatients and outpatient practices. They range from just being a general outpatient practice to practices that specialize in concussion, vestibular, high-level athletes. So there are a variety of different areas that you could work in. And I imagine that the field will also branch out into other areas. I think one of the areas where, you know, we as a profession would like to see is that we get into more of preventative health and population health, whereas, you know, movement specialists, and if you look at the pandemic, a lot of the comorbidities that made COVID-19 more severe, such as hypertension and obesity, those are all things that could be helped with exercise. So, you know, the hope is that physical therapy will get in more into the preventative aspect of health. So those are the different areas.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Mindy?
Okay, so I'll just come down like a laundry list, but so definitely inpatient, acute care, outpatient, hand therapy, again, across the lifespan, working with older adults, working with babies and infants in the neonatal intensive care unit. We also are trained in the area of mental health. So we also, occupational therapists actually have their beginning was within the area of mental health. And we like to look at patients very holistically, looking in terms of, which I know all of our professions do, but it's really like at the base and our core and our documents that really drive our profession talk about really looking at someone holistically from a patient-centered model. And just as you were saying, Ruth, also looking in terms of population health and public, using a public health model to be able to prevent someone from needing, we call it early intervening services. The earlier you intervene, the less likely someone might need more intensive services later. We have OTs that are working within the prison systems, working within homeless population, doing mindfulness types of different yoga and other areas. It really, if you can think of a site, you'll find somebody that would be able to, an OT, be able to work on the different occupations of living.
Thank you so much. Prevention is so important.
Yep.
And Maruf, how about you?
One thing that's great about the PA profession is that there is a large flexibility component to it where, you know, once you graduate, you can technically go into any field of medicine and then switch if you like. So for example, my background in emergency medicine allows me to easily transfer to even like orthopedics, ICU, things like that. And you can really do that in any phase of your career, especially if you're someone who likes to delve in a lot of different aspects of medicine. And there's always more to learn within each field. You can also work in an inpatient setting, in the hospital, or even an outpatient setting. There are a lot of different things you can do. Telemedicine now, which is starting to become a huge thing, and I won't go into the stocks aspect of that one either, but there's a lot to do overall in the field of medicine, especially as a PA.
Awesome, thank you. And then now we have some program specific questions. So Ruth, what are the minimum requirements to get into your program? And what would also help an undergraduate student stand out as a strong candidate to get into your program?
Okay. The minimum requirements, and I will also let students know that all of these are on our website, but you need to have a bachelor's degree. You can apply in your senior year, but you need to have that degree before you start. A GPA of a 3.0. There's a list of prerequisites that you need to take. Science prerequisites. They are basically 2 semesters of biology 101, 102, the 2 semesters of chemistry, 2 semesters of physics, a stats course, and psychology, I think are the ones, but they are all listed on our website if I forgot something. So you need to have those prerequisites, and you need to take the GREs. Normally we like students to have some observation hours, but due to COVID for this year, we're not sticking to that as severely because we know that people could not get into clinics. So that's the minimum. And I think how people stand out, unlike other programs, I think we take a holistic approach to admission. So, you don't have to just be a 4.0 and do great on all your tests to get into our program. You could be an average student and still get in if you really show us that you know the field. That's important. You know our program, and that you can articulate that you want to help people. And we do require an interview. People are asked into an interview, and we weigh the interview fairly heavily because that's how we really get to know our students.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Mindy?
So our requirements to get in are very, very similar to the physical therapy program. We are a weekend program. So Friday nights, all day Saturday, and all day Sunday every other week or thereabouts. We work on a trimester. So we want to make sure that in addition to the 3.0, we do not require GREs, but in addition to the 3.0 and also an essay together with putting together all of your the prerequisites courses, we want to make sure that you also have an understanding of just the rigor that's involved in a weekend program, and that you understand a little bit about Mercy. In particular, if you're going to be applying to Mercy's program, we'd like to know that you would be a good fit for the program, because it can be quite rigorous being on a weekend. There are positives to being a weekend program, but there are certainly some trade-offs there. We do require an in-person interview as well, and it is a group interview, and also an on-campus essay to be written. We do have courses that must be taken at Mercy as part of the prerequisite, but you can wind up being accepted to the program and then finish taking those courses, such as Introduction to Occupational Therapy would be one of them. But some of the courses that we require at Mercy would have to be taken before you'd be able to sit in a seat at the, in the master's program.
Perfect, thank you so much. And how about you, Maruf?
So our requirements for the PA program are pretty standard for most other PA programs. I'm actually going to put it into the message box so that you guys can refer to it if you need to, or you can go to the website as well. But in general, you need to have a minimum of a 3.0 GPA, 3.2 GPA for the science-specific courses, the core courses. These are usually like biology, chemistry, etc. And you can take a look at the list over there. But I will say, despite the 3.0 minimum GPA and whatnot, most people do tend to have slightly higher GPAs, on average about 3.5. Now, with that being said, you could have a 4.0 GPA, be a complete, smart person, but be a jerk. and I would not want you in my program. And that's where the interview comes into play. I can't speak for everyone in the academic panel or the admissions panel in my program, but at least for myself, I look for someone who has shown at least some merit in terms of how much they care and want to do well for their community in terms of their medical interventions and their careers. I want to make sure that they are in a good place in their life where they are emotionally mature. You know, there's a certain level of maturity that is required to be in a master's program. That goes for any master's program. In this program, you are going to be going to school for about 2 years, and it's pretty intensive. So we want to make sure that emotionally you are prepared to delve into this new aspect of your life, and possibly one of the hardest aspects of your life. But beyond that, you know, as long as you feel like you are prepared for that, as long as you show your passion, those are the things that strike me the most, and those are the things that I'm going to look for in my applicants.
Awesome, thank you. Most importantly, don't be a jerk or don't show it on the interview. Okay, last question for you all. Thank you. Ruth, what stands out for a candidate during the interview process? So it sounds like the interview is really, really important to everyone, to each program. So how could a student stand out in an interview with you?
You know, I do think we do look at some basic qualities, communication skills, the ability to communicate and articulate. But I think the big thing that we really look for, the two big things we really look for are, has the student researched the field and they know what they're getting into in terms of PT and how it's different from other health professions. I think that's number one, that they really understand what PT is. And I think the second is that they understand our program. And I did forget, Mindy reminded me that we are also a weekend program. And with the weekend program, that brings learning challenges that are unique to a weekend program. It's on the weekends. So from a social standpoint, you have to give up some things that you might like to normally do on the weekend to be here. And two, you're getting a lot of material is being covered in a weekend. So it is a different way of learning, and it requires some adjustment from the undergrad. There's adjustment that needs to be done from undergraduate to graduate anyway, but from moving to a 5-day-a-week program to a 2-day-a-week program, which is a rough program, you know, a challenging program, I think requires some adjustment. And we do look that students have thought about that and have a plan.
Great, thank you. And how about you, Mindy?
In addition to what Ruth was just saying as well, we do recognize that OT, and actually all of the careers we're talking about right now, are really team sports. So we need to be collaborative. And in order to be collaborative, we need to be good listeners. And we also need to be able to communicate our needs and to be able to assert for ourselves. So during the interview process, that is one of the things, those are some of those qualities that we're looking for. We realize that there is growth that happens within the within the program, that we're not looking for someone right out of the gate to possess all of those skills, but to be able to show an interest in it and to be able to feel comfortable enough to be able to answer some of the questions and relate back to some of their life experiences regarding why they would like to choose this field.
Wonderful, thank you.
Sure.
And how about you, Maruf?
Definitely everything that both the panelists have said so far. I think just to add to that, also just be human. You know, it goes back to the whole jerk thing. If you can keep a nice, clear conversation with me, you know, have a nice, amicable interaction, keep eye contact with me, it shows me that you know what you'll be doing when you get to a patient. You know, from my ER background, I get patients that are scared. They have no idea what's going on. And if you, as someone someone with a PA background, cannot look at a patient in the eye and tell them what they want or what they need to hear and tell them confidently, then it's not the right profession for you.
Wonderful, thank you. That was great advice from everyone. So now we have about 5 minutes for general Q&A for every panelist. And then after that, we'll put some Zoom links into the chat if you have any program specific questions. So thank you, panelists. And I'm gonna pass it on to Dorleen for fielding any questions for the whole group. You are muted, Dorleen.
Of course
There
I
you go.
am.
It happens to all of us.
Thank you. Career and Professional Development would like to thank our awesome panelists, starting with our graduate students, Rachel, Paul, Nicholas, and Diane. We wish you guys well on your career endeavors. We also want to thank our panel of faculty, Professors Ruth Hussein, Mindy Garfinkel, Ruth Hansen, and overseeing Professor Ferdinand Esser. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to share with us. We will have an additional 15 minutes set aside for program-specific questions. Sarah will put the individual Zoom rooms by occupation in the chat. However, this is our general question and answer time where all of our participants can ask questions for the next few minutes. We already have some questions that were sent in the chat. However, if you want to ask a question, we're going to ask that you either raise your hand and Alan will unmute you, or you can simply put your question in the chat. This question is for our graduate panelists. And I guess we can also ask our faculty as well. Has anyone been on a waiting list? And I'm assuming the person who asked this question is referring to when you're applying to graduate schools. And if you have been on a waiting list, how did you cope with wondering if you will ever get in to the program or not? No one's been on a waiting list? Oh,
So
I see.
I haven't personally been on a waiting list, so I can't tell any personal experience. However, someone in my cohort in my class kind of shared with me that they were on a waiting list. And after a couple months, they actually were called and given a spot in the program. So people do get put on a waiting list, and there are opportunities even if you are on a waiting list. So all hope is not lost, I guess, based on what I've heard from this person.
Nick?
Similar to Paul, I too, so going into the OT program, you can apply even if you haven't finished all your classes, as long as you can get them done within a year. And if you're put on a wait list, you have that internal battle, like, well, do I still pursue these classes even though there's no guarantee of me getting into the program? And that was a battle I had. I wasn't put on the waiting list, but I do know people in the cohort who have been, and it's scary. It's a battle. It's a commitment, and it's pretty unsure. I can tell you the people I'm speaking of have gotten in since. And if this is something you truly want to do, this is something you truly want to pursue, you put all your chips on black. You go for it. I find most of the time it works out for you, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to do.
That's awesome advice. I did see Ruth wanting to share as well. What do? How do you cope?
Well, I don't have to cope with being on the waiting list because I'm a faculty member, but for anybody who may find themselves on a waiting list, I could only speak for our program, is that we do take a significant amount of people off the waiting list. There have been years where we've taken people off the waiting list the day before classes start. One year we had somebody who intended to come and had a personal issue and couldn't come, and we had a vacant seat, and we called somebody on the waiting list and said, do you still want to come in? And she was like, yeah. And we're like, okay, well, you missed orientation, but come to class tomorrow. And I don't know if we could really tell once the students are in the class and they're mixing who was on the waiting list and who was not on the waiting list. I could only speak for that particular student, ended up being, really one of our top students. So I don't think there's a big difference once the students come in and they become part of the class. No one really knows.
Yeah. It seems to all work out in the end.
Yeah.
Well, I know that we are pressed for time. That was the only question that came in. I didn't see any additional questions come into the chat. Alan, anyone? Oh, Nope.
Nope.
All right. So I'm just going to direct everyone who is interested in asking more specific questions about the different occupations to our chat, where we have individual Zoom rooms set up for you to ask those questions. Sarah, did you want to leave any final words?
Just thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your personal experiences. I think it's really helpful for people to understand the journey, and everybody has a different journey. So thank you for sharing, and thank you students for coming today. We're very happy that you were here. And we can hang back, and then each program can go into their Zoom room for those specific questions. So thank you all. Rachel and Paul, if you want to go into the Zoom room associated with your major, because maybe a student has a question for you as a graduate student, or some advice they're looking for. That was the easiest breakout rooms I've ever done. Just go into it. We could just hang out here, or no, if you want to.
These students still in here? Julian, Rebecca?
Yeah, there's still a couple.
Okay. Sure.
And Paul's coming back. Maybe he went to the wrong room.
Oh.
That went well.
Yeah, I thought it went
Hey,
great.
Did really good.
Yeah.
The timing was impeccable.
We're sticklers
Wow.
for time.
Great.
I appreciate everyone being on the time schedule with no prompts.
Sarah, Sarah, Paul asked, do you mind resending the Zoom link? Which one is Paul again?
Oh, sure, Paul, it's in the chat. You
For
were
PT.
PT.
I think
Here, I
because
can.
he left and came back.
Yeah, I got
Oh,
it.
you can't see the chat.
I think I
Okay, I'll post it
accidentally,
again.
clicked the wrong link.
Here, I got it, Paul. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
I might have it faster. It's a race, Ellen. Oh, he beat me.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Question from Rebecca, Shanae, and Julie.
What'd you say? Oh,
Any questions from the remaining students in the room? Maybe they wanted to ask us questions.
He could have. Rebecca and Julian, did you have any questions, or the panel is concluded? Everybody's just going into the individual rooms if you have questions, but if you don't, then you can leave the session when you'd like. And same for you, Garija. Do you have any questions for us?
might have left. I don't know if we want to remove them. Maybe they walked away or something from there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Rebecca in the waiting room.
Oh,
I thought that
didn't
was
you-
a wonderful session.
let me readmit Rebecca, or did you put her in the waiting room?
Yeah, I put her in the waiting room.
Oh,
Because she may have walked away from.
Oh, Garisha's coming back.
sorry, Dorleen. I thought she went to the waiting room. Here, I'll put her back in there.
Yeah, and I put the links in the waiting room for them as well, so they know where to go.
Rebecca and Garisha, do you have any questions? Are you having some trouble getting into those rooms? I'm going to turn off the security of unmuting themselves. They can unmute themselves now.
Oh, yeah.
I think we can stop recording. Should we?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Joy.